Ashley Wadsworth was chasing love, adventure, and a fresh start. She left her quiet Canadian hometown for a new life in England with a boy she met online. But within weeks, her dream turned into a horror story, one that would end in heartbreak, violence, and a scene that even shocked seasoned detectives. What happened inside that quiet apartment in England will leave you speechless. In the quiet town of Chelmsford, England, the morning was still, almost too still. But then, the peace was shattered by loud, frantic cries coming from Jack Cipple's apartment. The screams cut through the air, full of panic, but just as suddenly they stopped, leaving behind a heavy silence that sent shivers down the spine. Hours passed, and when the police arrived, they found something that shook even the most hardened officers to their core. Inside the apartment was 19-year-old Ashley Wadsworth, a young woman from Canada who had traveled across the world to be with Jack, the man she thought she could trust, the man she believed loved her. But instead of a future filled with promise, Ashley found only darkness. How did it come to this? How did love turn into something so deadly? The truth that emerged from the shadows was far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Jack Cipple, the man she thought would protect her, had taken her life. His obsession, his control, and his twisted love had led to a brutal end. What began as a dream turned into a nightmare, and the chilling truth revealed a tale of obsession, manipulation, and a love so poisonous that it would claim everything in its path. Ashley Wadsworth, born on July 25, 2002, in the small town of Vernon, British Columbia, Ashley Wadsworth grew up surrounded by the warmth of a large, tight-knit family. As the younger daughter of Kenneth and Christy, she was always close to her older sister, Haley, and together, they thrived in a community where over 50 relatives lived, all bound by blood and tradition. But as with all stories, change came. After her parents' divorce, Ashley's father remarried and welcomed 2 more children into the family, Crystal and Brandon. Though the dynamics shifted, Ashley's bond with her family, especially with her niece, Paisley, the daughter of her sister Haley, remained unshaken. Ashley treasured that connection, holding it close, not knowing that the love of family she once held so dearly would soon be overshadowed by a far darker force. Ashley was a bright spark in the lives of everyone who knew her. With her outgoing nature, infectious laugh, and warm heart, she was loved by friends and family alike. She thrived in the outdoors, swimming, horseback riding, and skiing, and her spirit of adventure never seemed to tire. She even took to tennis, and her clarinet playing echoed through the halls, a melody of youth and joy. On top of that, Ashley was a social media butterfly, constantly sharing memes, jokes, and snapshots of her life, bringing smiles to everyone who followed her. But it was on these very platforms that her path crossed with Jack Cipple, a boy from far-off Essex, England. What started as innocent online conversations would soon twist into something darker, pulling Ashley into a world she never could have imagined. Jack Cipple, born on January 9, 1999, came from a family steeped in complexities. He lived with his mother, Tracy Dalton, and her partner, Ricky, but the bond with his late father had long been severed. His family connections were thin, with no contact at all with his brother, Jordan. However, he remained close to his sister, Nadia, though even that relationship had its own shadows. Jack was known for his charm, his ability to make others laugh, but beneath that was something darker. His personality was unpredictable, sometimes humorous, other times cold and distant. Those who knew him described a boy who had a knack for hiding his troubles, but his struggles with school and his occasional outbursts of aggression were never far from view. There was always an edge to Jack, something that hinted at the turbulence bubbling just beneath the surface. In 2015, when Ashley was just 12 years old and Jack was 15, their virtual friendship began. They met online through a mutual friend, a connection that would change both of their lives forever. Despite the distance between them, something about their friendship felt special. They didn't see each other in person, but through messages and chats, they formed a bond that felt real. Ashley, at such a young age, was excited to make a new friend. She didn't know that this simple online connection would grow into something much deeper and darker than she could ever have imagined. She would often sit at her family's computer, typing away for hours, sharing her thoughts, dreams, and laughter with Jack. Though she was young, Ashley kept the friendship open with her family. They knew about Jack and the hours she spent talking to him online. There was nothing hidden or suspicious about it at first, just a girl and a boy from different parts of the world connecting over common interests. But little did she know, this friendship would take a turn, shifting from innocent chats to something far more troubling. As Ashley and Jack's bond grew stronger, things began to change. What started as an innocent friendship slowly morphed into something more intense. Jack's behavior, once charming and harmless, began to show its darker side. He became obsessive. Whenever they had an argument, Ashley would try to block him, hoping to put some space between them. But Jack didn't accept this easily. No matter how hard she tried to cut off communication, he always found ways to reach out. He created new accounts or asked mutual friends to send her messages. It seemed like he couldn't let go, and his persistence started to feel like something more sinister than love. One of the moments that stood out to Ashley's family was when Jack got a tattoo. He tattooed Ashley's name on his arm, a gesture that her parents saw as deeply excessive. They worried, sensing that Jack's attachment to Ashley was growing unhealthy. What was once a simple gesture of affection now felt like an obsession, one that crossed into control. Jack's jealousy also began to show. He would often keep a close watch on Ashley's interactions with others. If she talked to another boy, Jack would question her, demanding to know who they were. Yet, despite his controlling behavior, Jack maintained relationships with other girls. He seemed to have his own secrets, while expecting Ashley to be completely loyal to him. It was a toxic, one-sided dynamic that left Ashley feeling trapped, unsure of how to break free. Despite the growing concerns, Ashley remained captivated by Jack. The more time they spent talking, the more she became emotionally invested. By 2018, when Ashley was 16 years old, she could no longer ignore the desire to meet Jack in person. She dreamed of finally seeing the boy who had become such a significant part of her life. However, Ashley's family was concerned about her safety. They had watched the relationship closely, growing more uncomfortable as Jack's behavior became increasingly troubling. They didn't want her traveling alone, especially across the ocean to a foreign country where they couldn't protect her. But Ashley, filled with the excitement of finally meeting Jack, felt that she was ready. Despite her family's reluctance, she was determined to make it happen. Their relationship wasn't without its struggles. They fought often, and Jack's troubling actions continued to raise red flags. But each time there was tension or distance between them, they always found a way to reconcile. Ashley would forgive Jack, and Jack would promise that things would be different. The cycle continued, with Ashley growing more attached, unable to see the warning signs that were so clear to those around her. As Ashley entered her late teens, she began to save money from her jobs at fast food restaurants and department stores. The idea of finally meeting Jack, of closing the distance between them, became a dream that grew stronger with every passing day. With her newfound financial independence, Ashley took another step toward making her dream a reality. She bought herself a tablet to keep her online life more private, a device that would allow her to communicate with Jack without the prying eyes of her family. She was determined to control her own world, even if it meant distancing herself further from those who cared about her safety. By November 12, 2021, Ashley, now 19 years old, made a bold decision that had been a dream for years. She finally took the leap and traveled to the United Kingdom on a 6-month tourist visa to meet Jack for the first time. It was a huge moment in her life, her very first international trip, and she planned to celebrate her 19th birthday with Jack. Her family and friends, of course, were filled with concerns. They feared for her safety, knowing the past red flags in Jack's behavior. But Ashley was determined. The excitement and thrill of finally meeting Jack clouded all her doubts. She saw this as a milestone, a chance to prove that everything they had talked about for so long was real. For her, this wasn't just about meeting a boy she had grown attached to. It was about experiencing life, freedom, and love on her own terms. She left, her heart filled with excitement, but the people who loved her couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something far more dangerous than she realized. Ashley didn't just travel to the UK to meet Jack. She had bigger dreams in her heart. According to those close to her, she was thinking about the future. She hoped that if things went well, maybe she could live with Jack and even continue her education there. For her, this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was a chance to start a whole new chapter of her life. On November 13th, 2021, just one day after landing, Ashley met Jack in person for the very first time at London Gatwick Airport. She was full of excitement. The boy she had talked to for years, the one who had become a huge part of her life, was finally standing in front of her. That very same day, she updated her social media profile picture to one of them together. She wanted the world to see what they had. But to everyone who saw them, the difference between them was clear. Jack was 22 years old, but he looked much older than Ashley. He had tattoos all over, on his arms, his hands, even on his face. Meanwhile, Ashley looked bright, cheerful, and full of life. She had a kind smile and the energy of someone still discovering the world. Ashley stayed with Jack in his apartment during her visit. He lived alone in a small unit inside a public housing complex in northwest Chelmsford. The place wasn't in the best part of town. In fact, the area was known for its rough reputation. But that didn't stop Ashley from enjoying her time. The couple spent their days going around town, visiting the nicer parts of Chelmsford, trying to make memories together. At first, everything seemed like a dream come true. Jack acted just like the sweet, loving boy Ashley had known online. He told her how beautiful she was, made her laugh, and always wanted to be close to her. They took romantic selfies together, smiling like two people deeply in love. For Ashley, it felt like all the years of waiting and hoping had finally paid off. But behind those smiles, a darker side of Jack began to show. His moods would suddenly change. One moment, he was gentle and caring. Then, without warning, he would become cold and angry. Ashley started to see the side of him her family had worried about. His behavior was unpredictable. Sometimes it wasn't just anger, it turned into cruelty. He would say mean things, lash out, or make her feel small, even after moments of affection. The loving boy from the screen was still there, but so was someone else. Someone much more dangerous, hiding behind the handsome face. During their time together in Chelmsford, Ashley and Jack were almost never apart. They did everything together, ate, walked around town, stayed at home watching shows. Wherever Jack went, Ashley followed. She had come across the world for him, and now that she was finally there, she didn't want to waste a single moment. But there were limits to what she could do. Because Ashley was in the UK on a tourist visa, she wasn't allowed to work. That meant she had to depend on Jack for everything. Jack, however, didn't have a job either. He lived off government support and got a little extra help now and then from his mother, Tracy, who lived close by. Even though money was tight, Ashley still made their life look happy online. She kept updating her social media with bright photos and joyful captions. She posted pictures of her and Jack smiling, hugging, and enjoying little moments together. To the outside world, everything looked perfect. They even took a big step together. They adopted a puppy and named him Winston. It was a cute little dog that quickly became part of their small world. With Winston in the picture, things looked even more like a fairy tale. But sometimes, the pictures people post don't show the full truth. And behind those happy images, a storm was quietly building. But as the weeks passed, things slowly began to change, and not for the better. Jack started pulling away from the world outside. He no longer wanted to go out or explore the city like they used to. Instead, he stayed inside the apartment almost all the time. Most days, he'd sit for hours, smoking cannabis and playing video games, barely paying attention to Ashley. For someone like Ashley, who loved the outdoors and was full of energy, this new routine felt like a cage. She wanted to go outside, take walks, meet new people, and enjoy her time in a new country, but Jack made that difficult. He became more controlling. He didn't want her talking to neighbors. He didn't want her leaving the apartment without him. Little by little, he began cutting her off from the outside world. What started as a romantic visit was now beginning to feel more like isolation. Ashley had dreamed of love and freedom, but what she found instead was a slow, quiet kind of trap. Before she even stepped foot in the UK, Ashley had already taken steps to stay connected to her faith. A friend from her church back home had introduced her to a group of American missionaries living in England. Ashley was excited. She hoped to meet them, attend church, and keep her spiritual life alive while she was so far from home. But Jack wouldn't allow it. He told her she couldn't go to church. He didn't want her meeting the missionaries. To him, anything that pulled Ashley away from him, even for a few hours, was a threat. He wanted full control over her time, her thoughts, her world. But Ashley didn't give up so easily. Quietly in secret, she stayed in touch with the missionaries through text messages. She would send a message, then quickly delete it so Jack wouldn't see it. It was risky, but it was her small way of holding on to her freedom, of staying connected to something that felt like home. Each message she sent was a silent act of resistance, a whisper of the girl who hadn't fully given in to Jack's control, not yet. It didn't take long for the missionaries to sense that something was wrong. Through Ashley's quiet messages, they began to see signs of deep trouble. Jack wasn't just protective, he was controlling, maybe even dangerous. When Ashley finally opened up to them, she confessed what she had been hiding. Yes, she knew she deserved better. Yes, she could feel that something wasn't right. But still, she stayed. Why? Because in her own words, her biggest goal was to make Jack happy, even if it meant losing pieces of herself along the way. But the darkness in their relationship didn't stop at emotional control. It went further. Around 6 weeks after Ashley had arrived in England, Jack sent a disturbing text message to his own mother. In it, he admitted something horrifying. He had hit Ashley. His reason? Jealousy. He had found out that years ago, long before she even came to the UK, Ashley had blocked 2 British phone numbers. That small action from the past sparked a violent rage in him. So he struck her. It was a terrifying glimpse of what Ashley was truly living through. Far from home, far from help, and slowly being consumed by someone who claimed to love her. To the outside world, Ashley still looked like the cheerful, happy girl living out her dream in England. Her social media was filled with smiling photos, cute posts, and sweet messages about her life with Jack. But behind that carefully crafted image, a much darker story was unfolding. In secret, Ashley had started documenting the truth. She created a private account, one that only she could see, where she saved pictures of her bruises. It was the only way she could keep track of what was really happening to her, proof of the pain no one else saw. She also reached out to her older sister, Haley. Ashley trusted her, enough to share some of what she was going through. But even then, she was scared. She begged Haley not to tell their mother. She said that if their mom found out, she would hate Jack, and Ashley couldn't handle that. She was still trying to protect him, even while he was hurting her. Then, things got even more serious. In late December 2021, Jack tried to take his own life. He overdosed on anxiety pills, and Ashley had to call an ambulance to save him. He was rushed to the hospital and treated. But after that, something strange happened. Ashley, the one who needed help, was now made responsible for Jack's care. The nurses gave her a lockbox to keep his medication safe. She was told to manage it, to watch over him, to make sure he didn't harm himself again. So now, on top of everything else, Ashley wasn't just his girlfriend, she had become his caretaker. Trapped in a life where love, fear, and duty were tangled together, and no one truly knew how much she was carrying alone. Eventually, the secret became too heavy to keep. Haley, trying to help in her own way, accidentally let their mother find out what was really happening in England. The bruises, the control, the fear. Their mother was heartbroken and terrified. She begged Ashley to come home. She pleaded with her daughter to leave Jack and return to the safety of her family. But Ashley refused. She told them Jack would change, that things would get better. She believed, maybe needed to believe, that the man she'd loved for years could still be saved. Even after everything, she held on to hope. But hope couldn't stop the violence. In early January 2022, things turned brutal again. Jack, in a fit of rage, grabbed a beer glass and smashed it over Ashley's head. Blood. Shattered glass. Pain. Yet somehow, she stayed on her feet. And then, he made her clean it up. Ashley, with tears on her face and blood in her hair, video called Haley while she picked up the broken pieces. On the screen, Haley watched in horror. She could hear Jack shouting in the background, saw him pacing like a storm ready to explode again. Haley begged her to leave. She cried, pleaded, demanded that Ashley walk out and come home. But Ashley didn't. She stayed. Whether it was fear, love, or something in between, she stayed. On January 9th, the sun rose on what should have been a normal day, but in that small Chelmsford flat, it was anything but. Jack turned 23. There were smiles, cake, family. Even Ashley was there. acting as if the wounds from days before had simply vanished. Jack's parents, still shaken from his suicide attempt, wanted to bring peace into their son's life. So they planned a family trip to Rye, a quiet coastal town where the sea whispered calm and the skies stretched wide and clear. Photos from that trip told a story that wasn't real. They showed smiles, laughter, a couple in love. And back in Canada, Ashley's family clung to those images, not knowing they were a lie. They wanted to believe she was safe, that maybe things were turning around. But peace in Jack's world never lasted long. By late January, it happened again. Another argument, another explosion. Jack, consumed by rage, hurled a candle and a television remote at Ashley while she was in the middle of a video call with Haley. The screen shook. Ashley flinched, and Haley, yet again, watched helplessly as her little sister suffered through something no one should ever have to endure. This time, Ashley finally said the words everyone had been waiting for. She said she was ready to come home. But the next day, her resolve crumbled. Maybe she saw the boy she once loved in Jack's tearful apologies. Maybe she believed him when he promised to change. Or maybe she just didn't know how to walk away from someone who had taken so much of her life, her identity, her will. Ashley believed that something, time, medication, love, might fix him. She hoped she could be the cure to his chaos. And strangely, Jack seemed to understand his own madness. He knew how toxic he was. He would accuse her of things she never did, scream and hit, and then beg for forgiveness, crying like a broken man who couldn't control his own demons. But that guilt, that self-awareness, wasn't enough. Nothing was enough, because soon, the darkness would take everything. On the morning of February 1st, 2022, the darkness inside Jack spilled over once again. It started with suspicion. Jack accused Ashley of sneaking around, meeting other people behind his back. His paranoia fed his rage. He demanded to see her phone, her messages, her social media. He wanted control, complete, unshakable control. Then came the breaking point. Around 8 a.m., a neighbor in the apartment next door heard a sound no one ever wants to hear, screaming. Ashley's screams. Muffled, terrified, desperate. They pierced the quiet walls and filled the space with dread. And then a knock at the neighbor's door. Ashley stood there barefoot, tears pouring down her cheeks, her hand bleeding from a fresh cut. She was crying so hard she could barely speak, her body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. She told them what had happened. Jack had found a photo on her phone, a naked woman, and instantly assumed Ashley was hiding something. It didn't matter that it wasn't her. It didn't matter that the picture had nothing to do with anyone she knew. Jack's mind was already spinning. He screamed at her, tore through her phone, shattered it, and when that wasn't enough to satisfy his rage, he turned on their puppy, Winston. He picked up the tiny dog and hurled him against the wall like he was nothing. Ashley, wounded and terrified, ran for help. What the neighbors saw that morning was just a glimpse of the horror Ashley had been living through for months. But even that glimpse was enough to make it clear something terrible was coming. Despite the blood on her hands, the fear in her eyes, and the pain that no one could see, Ashley was still caught in the web of Jack's manipulation. Trembling, she begged her neighbor not to call the police. It wasn't out of a lack of fear, it was because deep down she still believed in him. She thought he would change, thought he would be sorry, and that he needed her. So, with a voice that wavered between desperation and guilt, she pleaded, "Please don't call the police." The neighbor hesitated, caught between concern for Ashley's safety and the promise she had made to her. Reluctantly, she agreed. But she didn't just walk away. She insisted that Ashley come with her to a medical appointment. Anything to get her away from Jack, to a place where she would be safe, where she could breathe without fear. But Ashley refused. Even after everything, Ashley couldn't bring herself to leave. She was trapped, caught in the belief that her love could fix him, that things would get better if she just stayed a little longer. Her mind couldn't shake the idea that if she left, it would be the final abandonment that would break Jack. Seeing Ashley's refusal, the neighbor did what she thought was best. She confronted Jack herself. She knocked on the door, determined to make him face the consequences of his actions. Jack, when faced with the neighbor's anger, shifted. His rage seemed to disappear. He apologized, appeared calm, too calm. He turned on the charm, pretending to be the loving boyfriend Ashley had fallen for. He promised that everything was fine now, that he was sorry. And in that moment, he convinced the neighbor to leave, to go to her appointment, and leave the situation behind. But the calmness was a facade. It was just another act in the twisted performance Jack had perfected. The danger, as always, was far from over. Around 9 a.m., a new presence appeared at Jack's door. Lucy, another neighbor, came over to drop off a package that had been misdelivered. She knocked, expecting nothing more than a casual exchange. But when Jack opened the door, just a crack, she noticed something strange. His body language was off, stiff, cold, and distant. His eyes barely met hers as he took the package without a word. Lucy found it odd, but shrugged it off. Jack had always been a bit standoffish, never one for small talk or pleasantries. She didn't think much of it and went on her way, not realizing the significance of that strange interaction. Meanwhile, across the ocean, a desperate phone call was unfolding in the dark hours of the morning. It was around midnight in Vernon, and Ashley had called her mother from Jack's phone. Ashley's mother had only just learned the horrifying truth, everything that had been happening to her daughter. Haley could no longer bear to keep it hidden, and with a broken heart, she revealed everything to their mother. The abuse, the control, the danger. The family didn't waste a moment. They immediately booked Ashley a return flight for February 3rd, desperate to bring her home, to pull her away from the chaos and pain that had swallowed her life. Ashley, in the midst of it all, told Jack she was leaving in 2 days. For once, her voice held the weight of finality. Jack, though reluctant, agreed to take her for a COVID test and drive her to the airport. It seemed like a concession, a sign that he would let her go. But everyone knew better by now. The calm before the storm was always the most dangerous. Ashley's mother gave her a final piece of advice. If Jack became violent again, don't hesitate. Go straight to the airport. Get on that plane. And if he hurt her again, she would call the police. The walls of silence were finally crumbling. But even as the escape was in motion, the greatest danger was still yet to come. As Ashley's family scrambled to arrange her escape, Haley, knowing time was running out, reached out to Jack's mother. Desperation laced her words as she explained the severity of the situation, how Ashley's life was in danger, how she needed help to get her out of there safely. But Jack's mother, preparing to leave for a trip, was unable to intervene. She listened, her voice heavy with concern, and before ending the call, she expressed a chilling fear. I'm afraid Jack might hurt himself once Ashley leaves. It was a final, hollow warning, an acknowledgement of just how unstable her son had become. The clock kept ticking, and as Ashley's 3-hour call with her family finally drew to a close, the distance between Chelmsford and Vernon seemed like an ocean. It was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon. They had talked as long as they could, exchanging every word of comfort they could muster. But moments after the call ended, Jack did something that made the blood run cold. He messaged his mother, his words short and sharp, revealing the full extent of the violence that had unfolded behind closed doors. He confessed that he had attacked Ashley again, this time throwing her to the ground with such force that he feared he might have fractured her arm. His mother read the message, but she did not respond. And in that silence, everything shifted. Jack's rage had escalated beyond any point of return. Between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 p.m., Ashley desperately tried to reach out for help, using Jack's phone to send multiple messages to her family and friends back home in Vernon. Each message was filled with urgency, pleas for someone to hear her, to come to her aid. But the cruel truth of the situation was that no one was going to see those messages right away. The time difference, the distance, everything was against her. She waited, but no response came. In a final, frantic effort, she messaged her church friends in Chelmsford. She typed out the words, "Please help, it's an emergency." The desperation in her message was clear, but tragically, her pleas for help went unnoticed. The messages wouldn't send until much later, long after the moment for rescue had passed. Between 12:38 p.m. and 12:45 p.m., the air in the apartment grew thick with terror. In a final act of violence, Jack did the unthinkable. He strangled Ashley, silencing the breath that had once filled the room with laughter and light. He didn't stop there. After her body grew limp, he retrieved a knife from the kitchen. In a frenzy, he stabbed her over 90 times, targeting her chest and abdomen. The brutality of it was unimaginable, a final, savage act that erased any trace of the girl who had once trusted him. What followed, though, was even more chilling. After taking Ashley's life in such a violent, calculated manner, Jack returned to his normal routine. He didn't panic. He didn't flee. Instead, he sat down to play video games. He acted as though nothing had happened, as though the world hadn't just collapsed. And then, as if to mark his twisted claim over Ashley, Jack changed his social media profile picture. It was a photo of him and Ashley, and the caption read, "Always mine." The words were hollow, filled with a sick sense of possession. They were the words of someone who believed that love could be twisted into something dark, something dangerous. But perhaps the most disturbing thing Jack did was create a video. He recorded a message addressed to Haley, his words filled with a chilling tone. He apologized for what he had done, expressing that he couldn't let Ashley go. He claimed that his mind wasn't functioning properly, that he was out of control. In the video, Ashley's lifeless body was visible beside him, her stillness a haunting testament to the violence he had just inflicted. Jack's words were empty, excuses for a crime so horrendous they could never be justified. He spoke as though his actions were somehow excusable, as if his twisted love had led him to this point. But there was no love in what he had done. Only obsession, only control, only death. Jack, however, did not send the video he had recorded. Instead, he inflicted superficial wounds on his chest, likely to fabricate a story of self-defense, trying to make it seem as if Ashley had attacked him first. The wounds were not severe, just enough to suggest a struggle, to cover up the horrific truth of what he had done. He wanted to control the narrative, to manipulate the situation in his favor, to paint himself as the victim. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family woke up to a series of desperate, alarming messages. Their hearts dropped as they read through the messages, realizing that something was terribly wrong. Immediately, they contacted one of Ashley's friends in Chelmsford, hoping he could get answers. This friend rushed to Jack's apartment, but after knocking on the door and receiving no response, he called the police, his gut telling him that something was seriously amiss. As he left, the police were on their way. It was around 4 p.m. in Chelmsford when the tension grew unbearable. Ashley's best friend back in Vernon noticed something strange. Ashley's social media account was active. Panicked, she immediately sent a message, desperate to reach her. But it wasn't Ashley who responded. Jack, in an attempt to deflect suspicion, took control of Ashley's account. He pretended to be Ashley, reassuring her friend that everything was fine. "No need for help," he wrote, "everything's okay." The message was chilling in its normalcy, as if he was trying to make it all seem like a misunderstanding. But those who knew Ashley well weren't fooled. The messages from Jack were cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to Ashley's usual warmth. Her family and friends, growing more frantic with every minute, sent more messages, pleas, questions, calls for help. But Jack, in his twisted game, ignored them all. He continued to lie, to hide the truth, and to maintain the facade that everything was fine. But deep down, everyone knew something was horribly wrong. The clock was ticking, and with every passing minute, the situation grew more desperate. Around 4 p.m., Jack called his sister, Nadia, and confessed to the unthinkable. He told her he had killed Ashley, even showing her the lifeless body during the call. His chilling confession confirmed the nightmare everyone had feared. At 4:13 p.m., the police arrived at Jack's apartment, responding to the earlier call from Ashley's friend. Inside, they discovered the horrifying truth, a scene that would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family was in a panic, still trying to reach her after receiving her desperate messages. Haley, consumed by a gut-wrenching fear, called her father, convinced that the worst had happened. Through tears, she told him she was certain Jack had taken Ashley's life. Kenneth, heartbroken and terrified, reached out to Canadian authorities, desperately pleading for help. Moments later, the devastating confirmation came from British authorities. Ashley was gone, her life taken by the person she had trusted the most. Jack was arrested on the spot, drenched in blood, and without hesitation he confessed to the crime. He claimed that he had experienced a psychotic episode, though his words did little to justify his actions. He was taken to Chelmsford Prison to await trial, which was set for September 7, 2022, at the Chelmsford Crown Court. Toxicology reports revealed traces of cannabis and therapeutic levels of his anti-anxiety medication in Jack's system at the time of the murder. Psychiatric evaluations confirmed that Jack was fit to stand trial, despite his claims of mental instability. The evidence against him was undeniable, with a video confession in his own words, along with physical evidence that tied him to Ashley's brutal death. Jack pleaded guilty, and the judge made it clear that there was only one possible sentence for his horrifying actions: life imprisonment. He was remanded in custody, awaiting his sentencing hearing, which was scheduled for October 10th. Although Ashley's family had the option to attend the proceedings virtually, her parents made the painful decision to travel to Essex, determined to be present in person to face the man who had taken their daughter's life. When the hearing began, the prosecutor laid out the shocking details of Jack's criminal history. Ashley's parents were left in stunned disbelief as they heard the full extent of the man their daughter had loved, revealing a dark past that had been hidden from them, a history of manipulation and control that would ultimately lead to their daughter's tragic end. Jack's criminal history dates back to 2014, when he was 15 years old. He took explicit photos of a girl he had met online, and after she ended their relationship, Jack retaliated by hacking her social media accounts and sharing the images. This led to a restraining order being issued against him. Despite the order, Jack violated it within a month by continuing to contact her online. In the same year, Jack's violent behavior escalated when he physically assaulted his mother during an argument over his Xbox. He pushed her to the floor and tore a door off its hinges. By March, he had breached the restraining order once again by sending another social media request to the victim, further demonstrating his disregard for the law. And when the restraining order expired in 2017, Jack wasted no time reaching out to the girl, contacting her just 6 minutes later. His message mirrored the coercive tactics he would later use on Ashley, telling the girl she could never get rid of him, even if it meant he would go to prison. In 2018, Jack's behavior took a darker turn. After cutting his arm and damaging a door during a confrontation with his mother, paramedics were called to the scene. Jack was sent to a juvenile detention center for his actions, and a restraining order was placed against him to protect his mother. However, he violated this order later that same year, continuing his pattern of defiance and escalating violence. In September 2019, Jack's criminal behavior escalated even further when he broke into an assisted living facility, which led to a 21-day prison sentence. By 2020, Jack's actions reached a disturbing peak. He was accused of false imprisonment, assault, and coercive behavior after locking a woman in his home. While the charges were ultimately dropped due to the victim's absence at trial, a restraining order was imposed against him. Later that year, Jack was involved in yet another abusive relationship. This time, his violent and controlling tendencies led him to choke the woman and lock her in his home. She managed to escape, but once again, no charges were filed, allowing Jack's dangerous behavior to go largely unpunished. Ashley's parents sat in stunned silence as they listened to the details of Jack's violent history, revealed piece by piece during the sentencing hearing. They had come to the courtroom hoping for closure, but nothing could have prepared them for the shocking truth about the man who had taken their daughter's life. As the judge read aloud a letter Jack had written to them from prison, the weight of his words filled the room. The letter, addressed to Ashley's mother and Haley, was Jack's attempt at an apology, though it felt like too little too late. In it, he expressed sorrow, acknowledging that no words could ever undo the pain or bring Ashley back. He spoke about his mental health, admitting that his condition had deteriorated over time, and claimed that this had led to intrusive thoughts which, in his mind, justified his actions. However, he was also painfully aware that none of this could ever excuse what he had done. As the court continued to review Jack's history, the full extent of his criminal past became clear. His violent actions over the years were not isolated incidents, but part of a long and escalating pattern of behavior. From the moment he was a teenager, Jack's actions towards women had been abusive, manipulative, and cruel. This history included everything from emotional abuse to physical violence, and even threats of harm. His inability to form healthy relationships, coupled with his aggressive tendencies, had created a devastating cycle of trauma for the people around him. As the judge deliberated on Jack's sentence, the courtroom fell into a tense silence. The prosecutor emphasized Jack's extensive criminal history, including his numerous violations of restraining orders and violent assaults. Despite the fact that Jack had pled guilty to the murder of Ashley, his actions painted a picture of someone who had shown little regard for the law or the safety of others. Finally, after considering Jack's extensive history of violence and his guilty plea, the judge passed down the sentence: life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 23 years. The judge's words were firm, but they offered no comfort to Ashley's family. While justice had been served in the eyes of the law, no punishment could ever truly atone for the pain they had endured. Ashley's parents left the courtroom in a daze. They had hoped for closure, perhaps even a sense of relief, but they left instead with the heavy burden of loss. Their daughter, the vibrant young woman who had been full of dreams and hope, was gone forever, taken too soon by the man they had never fully known. The road to healing, if it existed at all, would be long and fraught with pain. But for now, they were left with a painful truth. Justice may have been served, but their daughter's life had been stolen, and nothing could ever bring. On October 12th, Ashley's family and close friends gathered for a poignant vigil in her honor. The group included her parents, stepmother, a close friend, and Julie Taylor, a campaigner against knife violence who had tragically lost her teenage grandson, Liam, to a stabbing. Together, they walked from Brownings Avenue to the site where Ashley had spent her final days. With each step, they carried the weight of their grief, but they were determined to mark the spot where Ashley had once stood. When they arrived, they laid wreaths and placed roses on the doorstep, a symbol of love and remembrance for the young woman whose life had been so violently cut short. For a few moments, Ashley's mother stood alone at the site, lost in thought. The stillness around her seemed to echo the deep pain in her heart as she reflected on the life of her daughter, gone too soon. It was a moment of silence, a brief but powerful pause in the midst of the chaos and sadness that had consumed their lives since Ashley's death. As the vigil continued, neighbors who had attended Jack's sentencing hearing came out to offer their support. Some had known Ashley, while others had simply been touched by her story and the courage her family had shown in the face of unspeakable loss. Their presence was a reminder that, even in the darkest moments, there were those who stood in solidarity, those who wanted to help bear the weight of grief, even if just for a moment. In the weeks that followed, Ashley's remains were repatriated to Canada, thanks to the overwhelming support of hundreds of kind-hearted donors who contributed to a crowdfunding campaign organized by her family. The funds collected were not only used to cover the costs of transporting Ashley's body back home, but also allowed her family to plan a fitting tribute to the vibrant young woman they had lost. Her funeral took place on February 23, 2022. It was a ceremony filled with tears, but also with a celebration of Ashley's life. To ensure that as many people as possible could take part in the service, it was live-streamed, allowing friends, family, and even strangers who had been touched by Ashley's story to join from wherever they were. Though Ashley was no longer with them in body, her spirit remained, woven into every word spoken, every memory shared, and every tear shed that day. As we reflect on Ashley's heartbreaking story, it's crucial to remember the importance of recognizing red flags in relationships, especially for our children. Trust your instincts, educate them on healthy relationships, and always ensure they know they can turn to you when things don't seem right. No one should ever feel trapped or manipulated by love. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please seek help immediately. The signs are there, and they shouldn't be ignored. Remember, knowledge is power, and we can prevent tragedies like this by spreading awareness. Please like, comment, and share this video with those who need to hear Ashley's story. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Continent for more true crime stories that matter. Together, we can keep the conversation going and make sure these stories don't go unheard. Stay safe and take care of one another.